Welcome back to the Lemon Factor. I'm Chad, and today I'm with our project car, the 2019 Honda Accord 2.0 Touring. And I want to discuss suspension modifications. First thing I'd like to start off saying is I'm actually extremely surprised by how well the 2.0 Touring suspension handles. For some of you, you've seen some of my videos in the past where I discussed coilovers and lowering springs that are available for this car. And a lot of you have inquired what direction I went in. And as you probably can tell from some of the more recent videos, I haven't lowered the car. Although I hate that wheel gap, I really like how the car handles. It has a nice combination of a compliant ride while also being sporty. And I'm really concerned about degrading the feel of the car if I lower the car with coilovers or springs. Now, eventually I am gonna make a decision. I am gonna pull the trigger and I'm gonna try it, if for no other reason, just to see what impact it has. And I'm probably at this point more partial with going with lowering springs because we have the adaptive suspension on this Touring model here. And if I go with coilovers, then I am going to get an error code, and I don't want to see that on the dash. I also don't want to spend $300 for the module to make that go away. All I'm looking for is a little bit more performance from a handling perspective and lowering the ride height. So chances are I'm going to go with one of the Eibach or H&R lowering springs. But that's not what this video is about. So what I have in front of me here is Eibach's rear sway bar for the Honda Accord. And the reason why I'm installing this first is changing out your sway bar is not going to affect the ride quality. It will improve your performance when going around corners. So two main reasons why you would change out your sway bar on your Honda Accord, and that is to minimize or limit the amount of lean you feel in the car when going around corners. And when you're not going around a corner, you're not even gonna feel the effects of a larger sway bar. And then secondly would be to change the handling characteristics. A lot of front wheel drive cars like the Honda Accord have a tendency to have understeer. And to get a more neutral feeling car, I don't want a tendency for oversteer, but for a more neutral feeling car, you would change out the rear sway bar for a larger diameter, or if you're going from a hollow to a solid rear sway bar, to increase the stiffness of the sway bar. So whether it's increasing the size or the makeup of the sway bar, what you're trying to do is increase the relative rigidity of the rear sway bar as compared to the front sway bar. And that's what this Eibach sway bar does. As always, on the Lemon Factor, we're looking out for potential lemons. So that is either issues with the product itself or issues with the install. And as I go through this, I will point those out. So if you're interested in finding out how to install a rear sway bar on your 10th generation Honda Accord, then stay tuned. Before we jump into the install and find out how effective this rear sway bar is and see how easy it is to install, I always make myself nervous making that comment before the install. But anyway, please consider subscribing, turn on notifications, and like and share this video. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of it. The first thing I want to reinforce is that I am not a mechanic. I am a hobbyist like many of you. And as such, I would like to put this disclaimer out there that you follow these directions at your own risk. If you do not feel comfortable installing a rear sway bar or working with your car in any way, please bring it into a certified, trained mechanic. There is definitely potential danger involved, especially as we will be raising the car and putting the car up on jack stands. So you do this at your own risk. So the first potential lemon is associated with jacking the car up. And in the past, Some of you are aware that I am very fond of ramps. I think they are safer. They make me feel a little bit more comfortable. There's a lot less effort involved in using a ramp. In the case of installing a sway bar, whether it's the front or the rear, a ramp will not help us because we need to relieve the pressure, the tension from the rear suspension. And as such, we are going to jack up the car and put the car on jack stands instead of using the ramps. I have found out that using my regular jack stand, which has a maximum height of 20 inches, did not raise the car high enough where I could get the jack stands underneath the car. Luckily, I have another floor jack, as you see here, this Daytona. This is a low profile, long reach, and the long reach actually has, I believe, about 3.5 more inches. So I think the maximum that the long reach can raise the car is 23.5. Remember, put the car in park, put the emergency brake on, chalk the front wheels, make sure that the car is secure. But before you even attempt to do this install, make sure that your floor jack can raise the car more than 20 inches. Or again, maybe it's just me, but just be aware of that and take a look at that first. Let's take a look at what's in the box. So there's our sway bar. One thing I want to point out that when I did receive this, I did see on the box that it indicated that it was a sway bar for a Honda Civic, and I was really concerned at first. I checked on the Eibach website, and apparently the sway bar for the Honda Accord is the same for the Honda Civic. So if you go to buy one, keep that in mind. I have a couple Eibach decals. We have our hardware kit. So we have our polyurethane bushings. We have our bushing bracket. Got 2 of those. We have some synthetic lubricant grease to lubricate the inside of the bushings. And we do have installation instructions. So I'd like to point out the components we'll be working with. In the back here, right here, is our stock rear sway bar. And you can see here there's the bushing and the bushing bracket. Sway bar comes around this corner and it's attached to this end link, then attaches to the lower control arm. And the first step we're going to do is remove this bolt from the lower control arm to release the end link. Once we've done that, we will remove the bolts for the bracket and the bushings. We'll then take out the OE rear sway bar. We'll reuse our end links and attach our end links to our new Eibach rear sway bar, and then we'll reattach everything. What I'm going to do is apply some PB Blaster to all of the bolts that we're looking at removing. 12 millimeters for the bolt on the lower control arm. As you can see, I've removed both the lower bolt and the top bolt. Top bolt needed an extension just to get up and in there. Remove the bracket from the OE sway bar, which gives me a lot more room to work with. They came off fairly easily. I'm also, as you can see here, removing the end links from the sway bar. And to do that, you need a 5 millimeter Allen wrench, and then this is a 14 millimeter wrench. One thing to note right here with the OE sway bar is the orientation. So the sway bar curves and starts curving downward. So make sure you're aware of that so that when you install the Eibach, you keep it in the same orientation. So let me... So there you go. That is the end link. I'm just going to reattach this bolt just to make sure that I don't lose it. So the orientation is this way, as we just removed it. Just make sure you're aware of that. So bolt is on the inner part or the center part of the car. You attach the piece with the bolt to the sway bar. This piece goes right inside here with this longer bolt that I had already removed sliding through it. Apply a little bit of water and just dishwashing soap to the hanger here, and was able to move it back and forth and then finally break it loose. I'm having a feeling that as of right now, the biggest lemon is just trying to remove this stock bar. Okay, we were able to get the OE rear sway bar out, and as you can see, the Eibach at the bottom in red and the OE sway bar at the top. Did take a lot of finagling to get that out. The hardest part is getting the OE rear sway bar out and getting the Eibach sway bar in. That's where I've spent my most time. And I put the reattached the hanger, the exhaust hanger. Now that the sway bar is in place, I'm going to add the end links. Now it's not going to hang like this. I'll lift this up, we'll attach the end links, and I have to decide whether to put it on the softer setting or the firmer setting. So we've attached the end links to the sway bar, the end links to the lower control arm. This will be torqued to a specific spec. We'll do that later. We have a polyurethane bushing. We have the bushing bracket that goes over it. We're going to apply some of this synthetic grease that comes with the kit to the inside of the bushing to help prevent any squeaking as the bar torques around, twists within it. Just going to squeeze half the packet inside there. All right, that seems to be about half the packet. All right, just going to stick my finger in there. Spend some quality time making sure that this is all nicely greased up. You certainly don't want to remove everything to try to get back at this. So after greasing the sway bar bushings, I installed the bushings on the sway bar. I then put the brackets over the bushings. I then took the OE bolts and mounted it to the car. I loosely torque down the bolts, so you don't want to tighten them down until you have everything in place. Put the bolts in, but give yourself some room so that you can move the bar both up and down and side to side so you can get the other side of the sway bar position just right. Took a little bit of maneuvering to make sure all the holes lined up. I will tell you that you're going to get messy. The synthetic grease starts getting over everything. So I'm going to torque down all of the bolts. It is very difficult to get to some of these bolts, especially the top bracket bolt. That is, you probably can't tell from this angle, but you really have to get back there. It's recessed rather far back. Having a deep socket was extremely helpful. To torque everything down, you're definitely going to need a universal joint to help add some length to be able to use a torque wrench to properly torque everything down. I am going to start by torquing down the bushing brackets. I have my torque wrench and I have set it to 28 foot-pounds of torque. As you can see, I've included my extensions here. It is a 12 millimeter bolt. This will make it a lot easier to torque it down from a distance. Next, I am going to continue with the 12 millimeter socket and torque down the bolt that connects the end links to the lower control arm, and that is torqued to 28 foot-pounds as well. And the last bolts to torque down would be the end links, and those are 14 millimeter. We are going to torque them to 40 foot-pounds. The range is anywhere between 38 and 42, so I'll split the difference. So I did just come back from driving the car for about 30 minutes and it feels great. So remember, I have this on the soft setting. I don't even have it on the firmer setting. And although I only drove it for 30 minutes, I will tell you that absolutely I feel that it is more stable. I've gone around some clover leaves a rotary that I generally take on a regular occurrence, and I can take that at a little bit higher speeds. I kept it reasonable, so I really didn't push it that hard, but I found that the car did not lean. I found myself leaning and sliding in the seat. It felt really solid. Well put together. It does control the body lean. If you've installed a rear sway bar on your car, let me know what your experience was. Let me know what you think of it. For those of you who have it put on the firm setting, let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear your comments, your feedback. So thank you for joining, and until next time.